Hey everybody, it's Professor Snart here. It's a gorgeous Friday afternoon. Hopefully you have had the opportunity to get outside and enjoy the decent weather we're finally getting. Hopefully enough sunshine to dry up some of the muddy slop wetness that's out there. Anyway, super quick check-in here. It's fairly early in our course still. We're just a couple days in, although honestly that's a fair ways just given the sheer short time frame. But we don't have a ton of grades that are accumulating yet, but we will soon. So I wanted to give you just a quick check-in about sort of grades, a really umbrella, I guess, philosophy or policy or some things to keep in mind. First of all, you'll notice that our course is out of 1,000, so a nice big round number. So you can look at individual things we do and kind of get a sense of their relative importance, right, in the whole scheme of things. So 100 points is fairly important. Anything over that, right, is really important. A lot of stuff in our course is kind of in the 50-point range, so it's certainly valuable, but nothing is really make or break on a unit-by-unit basis, like the 50-point kinds of things. Obviously, you don't want to miss that entirely, right? That's a kind of a different story. But our course is kind of premised or built on lots of smaller point assignments instead of like 2 humongous assignments that add up to that full 1,000. So it's more kind of grading on my part, but I think that's a benefit. It's more interaction between us a little bit. And obviously the real benefit is that our course is sort of built of these smaller components. And so you have the opportunity to, like human beings do, kind of make a few mistakes here and there. And it's not like if you make it at the wrong time in that 300-point assignment, which doesn't exist in our course, all of a sudden your whole semester, whole term is really screwed. So our course isn't built like that. So one of the things that I really want to encourage you to do, and I give this advice knowing that it would be really hard for me as a student to take since I was a particular kind of student. So the whole course is out of 1,000, right? So we have, let's say, a typical unit assignment that might be out of 50 points. There's maybe like a reply or a posting component, a reply component, that totals about 50. So the general, it's not even a rubric so much as just a philosophy. That perfect 50 out of 50 is really reserved for the main work and the replies that really go above and beyond. And when it comes to something like a discussion board reply, which can be a little hard to figure out, like what's the standard that we're going for, the ideal situation in almost every context, but of course it changes a little bit depending on what we're doing, is the kind of reply that really shows engagement with an original post, whatever the work of that person was, real engagement, not just I really liked it or oh I did the same thing, but really kind of takes it a few steps further. And then beyond that, even starts to pull in like other things that we've done in class or other sort of pieces of knowledge that you can bring to the table. So that perfect 50 out of 50 or whatever out of whatever we happen to be doing isn't just meeting some like minimum baseline benchmark, like doing the sort of just bare required. That doesn't earn you the full 50 points. That 50 is really reserved again for the above and beyond. And it's tricky because I can't articulate exactly what that looks like and give you the 5 or 6 or 24 things that you absolutely must do, because that kind of changes a little bit. It's the nature of the kind of academic field that we're in. I always try to err on the side of being more generous rather than more punitive, because I get it that it's sort of an amorphous grading scheme. It's not quite as subjective as you might think. I mean, we can all sort of agree to see that this is a really terrific post and this is just kind of barely getting it done. So the 50 out of 50. Okay. So if you've, done the baseline work and kind of done some really basic replies, a few sentences kind of engaging, maybe that puts you in the 40 out of 50 range. And here's the advice I have, or almost the request I have of you. Try to think of that 40 out of 50, not as 40 out of 50, and not as like 80% or a low B, because it's really not, right? I don't micrograde between like a 41 and a 42. Think of the total out of 1,000 points that you're accumulating for the class. So I can't tell you what the difference between a 41 out of 1,000 and a 42 out of 1,000 is. I just can't. It's not that finely diced. Again, I try to err on the side of being generous. I try to, one of the things I promised that I do is by the end of the term, I always look at the whole picture of your grades, no matter what mathematical thing Blackboard spits out as just a calculated total. I always look back to see, has the work been generally good, or has the effort been really good? Maybe you kind of fell off a little bit a couple times, but otherwise things have sort of been up here, right? I'll always look for where the general point that you've been is. It doesn't mean that you can kind of just waffle through the course, and I'll give you the benefit of that doubt. But if you get a 40 out of 50, let's say, it's probably because I'm not seeing that sort of little extra something. Even a 45 out of 50 is, again, a really, really good grade, and that's going a little bit beyond what we would want for just baseline fulfilling the requirements of the assignment. So again, I know that's not a lot of specifics, but keep in mind that I don't micrograde between like a 41, a 42, a 43. So 40, 45, that 50, right? And again, 40 means you sort of met the basic requirements of that particular assignment. And I'm thinking especially of any kind of assignment where we do a main post and then a reply component where we sort of have that combined effort going on. So again, think of that 40 as like 40 out of the whole 1,000 for the course. So maybe you get some 40s, maybe you got some 45s going on. That will, generally speaking, especially if your project work is good, some of the higher point value, like the 100-point stuff, is good. Even if mathematically you're at that like 89.5%, I'll always look to see, okay, there's a couple of 40s in there, but mostly it's up here, so that's where we're going to go. So that's my promise to you once we get to the end of the course, and my request of you now is to not get so hung up on like, uh-oh, I got a 40, oh my god, B, or 80, even a 35 out of 50. That's more of, oh, I better up my game a little bit, but it's not like, oh my god, a C, now my grade is ruined. It really isn't. And I do the little voice there because that's the voice that I would make as a student if I got, oh my god, a C. Anyway, so take that for what you will. So some big picture grading stuff, right? It's not an exact science. Think big picture, 1,000 points for the whole course. And again, getting a really high grade on stuff isn't just meeting baseline requirements. It's really going above and beyond. And truthfully, if you, especially like in a discussion board, if you start reading through enough of them, you'll probably see the range, the same range that I see, and you can kind of get a sense of where yours is fitting in there, right? And there's no substitute for just spending the time and investing the effort. So if you're not doing that, you kind of have to be honest with yourself a little bit about realistically what grade are you expecting back. One last little note, just a practical thing. I don't provide a ton of feedback or even explanation for grades. It would take me so long to do that on all of the things that we do that I would get so behind that the feedback wouldn't even be useful by the time you got it. So I try to sort of pare that back. Hopefully the understanding of, if you get a 45, that's really great. If you get 50, that's phenomenal. If you're looking at sort of a 40 out of 50 or that equivalent, it means you sort of did things correctly but really didn't go above and beyond from what I can tell. So you can kind of gauge the feedback that I'd give you based on the grade itself. Having said that, though, in order to keep up, right, I'm not providing a ton of feedback just for everything we do to every person. If you have a question, right, or you would like further feedback, I'm more than happy to, go back and forth with you. In fact, the best thing to do, especially some of the higher point value stuff, is to connect face to face, either in real time or just like this. We can video chat for 5 or 10 minutes is usually all it takes. It's nice if you can make that investment if you're really concerned about the grade. And again, try to not panic if you see that slightly lower grade than you were expecting. We're really thinking big picture here. I think that's about it. Again, if you have questions or concerns, you can always be in touch with me. Our 5 weeks goes really fast, so we don't have a ton of grades coming in yet, but give it a few days and they'll start rolling in. All right? Have a great weekend, everybody.